Despite the massive success of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the franchise has taken a little bit of a nosedive in regards to its reputation, leading to an underwhelming reception for Assassin's Creed Shadows, and unfortunately, a very forgettable entry in Mirage for most. However, there have been some big shakeups at Ubisoft, providing an opportunity to revitalize the franchise that is beloved by so many. How's it? I hope you're all doing very well. Let me get this off my chest right away. I adore Assassin's Creed. It is one of my favorite franchises of all time. And to be honest, it's likely to be the topic of most of the videos on this channel. So if you also like Assassin's Creed, consider hitting that subscribe button. Now, before we even begin this discussion, I will admit that I am hopelessly optimistic about the future of this franchise. However, today I want to discuss the future potential that it holds by looking at some past failures. Now, Assassin's Creed Unity today may not be considered a failure, but at launch it was broken and it almost killed the franchise. And yet, a decade on, it is now one of the most beloved games in the series, with countless compilations of its multiplayer with servers being turned back on with the recent next-gen, or should I say current-gen update. Everybody wants to post about the parkour and how beautiful it looks. The game is absolutely stunning. And yeah, I think in hindsight, everybody looks back on the game very, very fondly, and we want some elements from Unity to come forward into the modern day. Now, we also know that the RPG formula has been used for the past 4 games in a row. We're not really going to count Mirage. And I think people are starting to get very tired. There's some burnout. People want to see something different, some shake-up, something new. And apparently this is what we're going to get with Assassin's Creed Hexe. But since we don't know exactly what they're planning to do with that one or anything else, let's just focus on what we do know. And that is, how can we improve this formula by using and borrowing some elements from 2 games, this being Unity and Syndicate, that were quite poorly received at launch. But wait, before I just absolutely start glazing Unity, let me highlight some of the elements that I'm not a huge fan of, just so that, we don't take everything from the game. Number one, the parkour, although it's beautiful, I find it a bit unpredictable. Like, oh, I want to jump here, and then its algorithm is like, no, you're going to jump here, or you're going to do this. And that's understandable given how complex it is, but I like having a bit more precision with my parkour. Next up, this is a game set in Paris, in France, and yet 90% of every person in the game sounds British. The crowd is annoying. I mean, it was a cool idea, having a large dense crowd that to go through, and in some situations it works very well. The pop-in is quite annoying as they all come in. Maybe on modern hardware that would be more easy to control, but really even just running through it can be quite irritating. It's a bit like a Plague Tale but with people. Thank goodness you can at least touch them. But not like that. I mean, like, you can brush past them. There's also too many pop-ups and junk in the world. This is a general problem with not only Assassin's Creed, but Ubisoft in general. For me, when I play, I like to turn off the HUD just to try and minimize this as much as possible. But then, to be honest, I don't know what I'm doing half the time. Especially when I go back to the game a few years later, like I did now, just to try and capture some footage. Oh, and lastly, what annoyed me when I went back to it and I realized is there's far too many repetitive world problems. Oh, kill these criminals here, tackle this guy. And it's like, that would be alright if it was spread out, but it's like every freaking street I walk down, there's something like the same thing to do. But now that the winding's done, let's move on to some of the elements that I think people will agree with me that should come into Assassin's Creed again that can make the franchise better. Now, these elements, there's some minor things that, would be nice if they added. And then there's some big picture items that I think every Assassin's Creed game should follow. Starting with one of the big picture items, the art style. Assassin's Creed Unity and Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Oh my word, guys. It is by far the best style in the franchise, in my opinion. I know this is very subjective, but in my opinion, it looks great. This dark, gritty, over-textured, beautiful reflections, lighting, hand-baked. Everywhere you go on the street, you feel it. You feel the time period. And it's the same with Syndicate as it is in Unity. And I think that is something I would love to see again. And it's a shame it only lasted 2 games. Like, don't get me wrong, Assassin's Creed Origins, Shadows, Valhalla, Odyssey, they are beautiful. They are stunning games in their own right. That's one thing you can't fault Ubisoft on. They make good looking games. But there was just something special about Unity and Syndicate. Just the way it looked. I felt more connected with the game. Okay, so let's balance out that big item with something a bit smaller, but lock picking. I enjoyed lock picking. And although I don't think the system that they used in Unity is necessarily the exact one I would like to see again, I think having some sort of puzzles or lockpicking to get into areas, not just chests but doors and everything, could really invoke the sense of secrecy. Assassins, what are you stealing sort of thing. Could be some heist missions that lockpicking could be involved in. On to the next note about combat. Now, do we want to return to the paired animation system? Probably not. I know everybody loves the finishes from old Assassin's Creed games, but I think the parry animation system was maybe not the most, well, I don't want to say it wasn't well received, because obviously a lot of us love these old games, but I don't think it's the thing that people are yearning for to return. But what I'm actually trying to get at, that, kind of slipped my mind while I was rambling there, is that the difficulty of enemies should scale by skill and not just health. When I was fighting some level 5 enemies, they started rolling. I would try and attack them and our swords would collide more than just me hitting them, and they tank the health. And I like that. It feels more realistic. It feels like I'm fighting a more skilled enemy, when at the end of the day, it's still parry, hit, but the windows are tighter and the stakes are higher. Whereas the level 1 enemies, I kind of go and I instantly hit them, and that's fine. As soon as my sword makes contact, guys, I'm not the fan of slashing a human and they're full of blood but they're not dying. I like, if my sword makes contact, tickets. So I'm perfectly happy with, if my sword is not going to hit them but I'm attacking, that they just deflect it, or they dodge it, or they do something, some sort of skill-based move to indicate that they are a harder opponent. Next up, motion capture. And now this is kind of in 2 points. Number one, good motion capture scenes. One of the problems with the new AC games is the motion capture scenes, yes, they look fantastic, they're good, they're great, it's exactly what you would expect. But then there's so many, like almost 90% plus of the scenes, there's no motion capture, and it looks stale and awkward, and no one really enjoys it. Whereas in Unity, the cutscenes, they are fantastic. You can feel the emotion, the acting, the everything is a lot better because of motion capture. And when you talk to an NPC and there's no motion capture scene, they don't zoom in on them. There's no need to actually zoom in on the face and have this dialogue cue when talking to somebody and they're giving you information. Just leave it zoomed out and have the voice play while you're standing there. That's so much better. And that's something that you revert to, because it doesn't take you out of the experience. Next up, and this is relating to the parkour, something that of course many people like, but specifically I'd like the vertical parkour controls, so that up and down. It's very nice when you're going down a building, just to hold right trigger B and your guy just starts, straight back down. It's very smooth, very fluid, and frankly it's a lot of fun. Next, a proper way to do investigation cases, or some difficult investigations. Not just in terms of apprehending a criminal or solving a murder, but also the enigma cases, something connected to lore and symbols and, the whole Assassin's theme, something difficult, something where, to be honest, I'm going to end up looking for a guide online because I'm too stupid to figure it out at some point. I would love something that makes you think hard. I've been playing Crimson Desert recently, and the puzzles, some of them are quite interesting. And it's nice that I sit there and I want to solve every puzzle without looking up the answer. Now, to be honest, the puzzles have been the easy part of Crimson Desert for me. Some of the bosses have whooped my butt once or twice. And that's where I looked up the guides, but that's getting off track. The fact is, I want something difficult. I want something where I'm going to have to solve a case, a riddle, and then connect it to the lore, put it in the database and all that, Next up, connecting stories and characters. Now, for this section, there's going to be a little bit of spoilers. But I love the fact that Arno's father was killed by Shay, and Shay is connected in a way to Adewale and to Achilles, and all of this is connected with Connor and with Hatham and with Edward, this whole section of Assassin's Creed. I love it when going from one game to the next, there's actually some connection between the stories. This whole jumping between time periods, and you go in between continents and going between hundreds of years. It's just not working for me. I much preferred going Ezio. Okay, Ezio was one game, Ezio. But then we got to AC3, and then we got AC4, AC Rogue, AC Unity, and it was just connected one off the other, off the other, off the other. And then in Syndicate, okay, the connection wasn't quite there, but you still had stuff like Edward's house in London. And it's these things that I think really makes Assassin's Creed special as a franchise and gets you connected and invested in the series and the lore. Speaking of the lore, Templars versus Assassins. I can't believe I even have to mention this one. Why is it so difficult to get a game about Templars versus the Assassins? It should be a fundamental point of the franchise. Even in Shadows, like, you had Templars and you kind of had Assassins, but it wasn't Templars versus Assassins. You had Yasuke hunting down some Templars, but that was kind of the extent of it. Speaking of Assassins, the execution of how an assassin behaves, acts, that should also come back. You know, when I assassinate someone, it's smooth. I walk past, blade in, out, and I continue walking. It should be like that. Every assassination should feel smooth and just cool. I shouldn't assassinate and then if I get caught, just fight everybody and then finish the mission that way. If I get caught, I should kind of want to flee the area. Run, try find somewhere to hide, jump to the rooftops, look for hay bale, do something creative to escape. This for me is more in the idea of how Assassin's Creed should be. You are a silent glass cannon in a way, and everything you do is smooth and quick. Speaking of smooth and quick, gadgets. Not just tools, not just throwing stars, not just smoke bombs or bells or whatever that you toss, but a whole toolkit and gadgets that are just cool, like the blades that you shoot out, or the berserk blades, and take out a couple enemies that way. Ezio even had like the gun on his gauntlet and all of this, and it's these types of gadgets that are going away. The rope launcher from Syndicate, and a lot of this is just due to the time period. You understand, where the further we go back in time, the less of these gadgets we can have. But also in my head, why do we keep insisting on going to these times where we can't have this? The next point I'd like to make is I think they should go back to one city or just a couple of cities, these dense environment where the buildings are close enough to parkour between. You can have set parkour routes. You know, Mirage did this, I think, very well. Looking back at it after playing the DLC, I really enjoyed the way Mirage was more tight, compact. You didn't really need a horse or a camel to ride or go anywhere. You weren't constantly having to stick to a road because there's trees in the way, going between big open area to big open area, fort here, fort there. In a similar fashion, I really enjoyed Paris. It wasn't my favorite city, but it's the general concept of that to bring into some of the newer games. For reference, just so everybody knows, London was my favorite city in the franchise. I really enjoyed it. Okay, yes, the buildings were very far apart, so maybe parkouring between all of them wasn't the most ideal, but I think the rope launcher was a really well implemented way of bridging that gap. Some people may not like the rope launcher, it's not realistic, yada yada yada. It was fun, it was a fun mechanic. But even if we want to ignore that, we can look at other games. We can look at the Ezio trilogy and the way they did that. We can even look at Assassin's Creed 1, you know, the 3 cities, each with their own themes, even their own color palette. There's a way to do this where we go back to a more dense environment where parkour is the focus, or even beyond parkour. It's just nice to run along rooftops, I think, as an assassin. It's part of the fantasy, and that's what we're really trying to invoke, is the assassin fantasy, considering that's been lacking in many of the recent games. But anyway, that's quite a bit of yapping, waffling, whining, moaning, complaining, yearning for some old features and for some fixes. But don't get me wrong, I don't hate the new games. I still love them each in their own right. I just think there is potential here to just make the perfect game. And if I'm Ubisoft, every Assassin's Creed game they pump out is between a 7 and an 8 at the minute. But if they really put their head down and went, okay, we don't need the microtransactions and the stupid skins and all of this, and we just go back to a traditional way of doing things, motion capture all the scenes, high quality story, keep it focused, keep it narrow. We don't need a bajillion side quests and a huge open world just to run from point A to B. We can keep it in one city, nice, condensed, and we really focus on it. They could make a Game of the Year contender. They could make a 9 or 10 game. But at the minute, they just seem so far away from it because of the business practices and the way it's run and how they want to execute these stories. But anyway, those are my general ideas, my thoughts. Some smaller details such as the lock picking and some bigger picture items, including the art direction and the storyline and the premise, Assassins versus Templars, all of that sort of thing. What are your ideas? What do you think they could add to the series? What do you think they could borrow from the old games? What do you think is great about the new games that they could keep in? How would you improve the franchise? And is there anything you think they should absolutely avoid from the old games? Maybe the Animus Datum missions if you didn't enjoy those. Just in general, what are your thoughts? Because I would love to hear them in the comments. But most importantly, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching if you've made it this far. I hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.